She slammed the notebook down so hard that the sound echoed through the kitchen. I know everything. That's all she said before crossing her arms. Her eyes locked on me like she was watching something rotten finally surface. The notebook was small, black, and worn on the corners, like something that had been opened too many times that I reached for it slowly. Confused, 100 questions running through my head. When I flipped the cover open, I froze. Every page had my handwriting, my name, my words. Only one problem. I had never written a single one of them. That if you like true stories that get darker the deeper you go, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss what happens next, because this one, it only gets worse. At first, I thought it was some kind of prank. Maybe a joke gone too far, but as I kept turning the pages, my stomach dropped. There were names of women I supposedly met. Times, places, hotels, gifts. Every line read like a confession from me. There were even short notes describing nights, feelings, and lies I'd told to cover them up. And the craziest part? The details were too real. That IT mentioned the day I was in Chicago for work. The exact hotel I stayed in. It described the restaurant I had dinner at with a client. But in the notebook, it said I was with someone else. The handwriting matched mine perfectly, the way I looped my G, the small slant in my T, even the way I sometimes wrote dates with slashes instead of dots. It was my writing. I looked up at her. Speechless, she stood there, stone-faced, like she'd been waiting years for this moment. Do you have anything to say for yourself? She asked quietly. Her voice didn't even shake. That's what scared me most, the calmness that I tried to speak, but nothing came out. My throat felt dry. My mind blanked. I picked up the notebook again, flipping to random pages, trying to make sense of it. Page after page of detailed, dated entries. Weeks, even months long. Everything from how I felt about these supposed women to what I planned to buy next. I said, "This isn't mine. I didn't write this." She laughed. Not loud, not cruel, just that kind of laugh that says, "You've been caught." "I've seen the receipts," she said. "The handwriting's yours. Stop lying." Receipts? I didn't even know what she meant until she pulled a small folder from her bag. Printouts, screenshots, even a few photos of gift boxes and hotel bookings, all with my name on them. All supposedly mine. That's when my head started spinning. I tried to think logically. Could someone have hacked my accounts? Forged my writing? But the level of detail. It was insane. Even I couldn't tell where the truth ended and the lies began. The more I looked, the more it felt like I was losing my mind. It had to be fake. But how? Who would go this far? And why did every date match my actual schedule? Business trips, meetings, dinners. All things I could verify actually happened. It was like someone had shadowed me for months and then rewritten my life on paper, she finally said. I was waiting for the truth to come out. I knew it would. And then she left the room. Just like that. No shouting, no crying, just walked away, leaving me with that cursed notebook in my hands. I sat there staring at it for hours. Part of me wanted to burn it right there in the sink, but another part, the rational one, told me not to. If someone really wanted to destroy me with this thing, I needed to know how deep it went. When I flipped to the back, I found something even more disturbing. An entry written for the next day. It described what I was going to do, where I would be, what I would say. I hadn't even lived that day yet. Whoever wrote this was still writing. That night, I couldn't sleep. Her words kept replaying in my head. I know everything. And I started asking myself a question I never thought I would. What if she was right? What if I'd somehow done all this and just didn't remember? It sounds insane, I know, but when the world you trust starts cracking, your mind goes with it. By midnight, I was pacing the kitchen, reading the same pages over and over, looking for something, anything, that could prove this wasn't me. That's when I noticed something odd. One of the pages had a smudge near the corner, like it had been printed. Not written. The ink looked too even. The indentation was too shallow. It wasn't handwritten at all. But when I tried to show her the next morning, she didn't even want to see it. She'd already made up her mind. And I realized something terrifying. Whether I was guilty or not didn't even matter anymore. The story in that notebook had already replaced the truth. And the worst part, everyone else was about to believe it too. By morning, the notebook wasn't just paper. It was momentum. She moved through the kitchen like a judge who'd already reached a verdict. No yelling, no tears, just silence that said I'd used up my last defense. I left it there on the counter and went to work with a knot in my stomach. The office had that hum people get when they know something they shouldn't. My elevator buddy stared at his shoes. A junior I mentor said a fast hello and took the stairs. Then HR emailed. Quick check-in today. There's nothing quick about a quick check-in. Their room was all glass and neutral tones. A framed poster behind the desk read, "Integrity means consistency." The rep thanked me for coming, said they'd received concerns, and reminded me they don't adjudicate personal matters, only workplace impact. I told her I was being accused of things that weren't true. She nodded gently, offered resources, and sent me off with a note about maintaining a professional environment. Polite words, heavy subtext, the AT lunch, an old group chat lit up. Someone posted a cropped paragraph with my name at the top and a few sentences that looked ripped from the notebook. Not explicit, but suggestive enough to smear. People didn't say proof. They said context. Context is the easiest weapon to swing. On the drive home, my mom called twice. When I picked up, she cried without raising her voice. "We love you no matter what," she said, which sounds kind. Unless "no matter what" replaces "we believe you." I told her it wasn't real. She asked why there were so many details. I had no answer she could hold in her hands. The AT home. The notebook was gone. In its place lay a manila envelope with my name in block letters. Inside were printed emails, checkout pages, screenshots, even a florist order with my signature line. The charge showed up on my card the same day. I'd led a meeting in a conference room packed with coworkers. That should have cleared me. Somehow it didn't. I opened my laptop and went straight to the boring corners of email. Filters, forwarding, rules. Buried under defaults was a stranger. Messages with certain words in the subject line were forwarded to an address I didn't recognize and marked read. I screenshotted everything, deleted the rule, and sat there listening to my own breath. It felt like locking a window after the intruder had been living in the attic. When she came in, I told her what I'd found. She shrugged. People make mistakes. Calmness like a wall. I said some pages weren't handwritten at all. The ink looked too even. She said of course I'd say that. Every sentence I spoke sank like a stone. I called my best friend, Evan. He showed up in gym clothes, sat at the table, and let me dump the evidence. He didn't interrupt. When I finished, he tapped the florist receipt. "The merchant ID doesn't match the store on the screenshot," he murmured. "Not a smoking gun, more like a hairline crack. Someone's curating this," he said. "They pick details that are believable because they're almost true." Almost true. That phrase lodged under my ribs. By the weekend, the ripple expanded. A neighbor stopped waving. A friend DM'd me. "Just own it and move on. People forgive faster when you confess." Our old pastor texted, praying for transparency. Everyone had advice for the confession I didn't have. Sunday night, I pulled a legal pad and drew lines. Trips. Meetings, alleged encounters, charges. I highlighted what I could verify and circled what made no sense. Twice I had ironclad proof, a time-stamped photo, an attendance log. But the notebook claimed the real thing happened just before or just after those moments, tucked into the shadows. Whoever built this understood suspicion. You don't have to prove a lie. You just surround the truth until it can't breathe. I decided to control what I could. I stopped at a print shop and learned how to access our home printer's job log. Back home, while she showered, I scrolled the dull blue service screen. Rows of times and file names, bland as weather reports. A cluster lined up with a few notebook entries. Not proof. Another thin crack in glass. I started a fresh spiral notebook for myself. Places, times, people, transactions. Not for court. For sanity. If someone else wanted to narrate my life, I would at least keep a ledger that didn't lie to me. Past midnight, the house settled. Then the printer in the office woke with a soft whir. One page slid out. I stood in the doorway, every muscle tight. Centered on the sheet, in the same clean font that haunted those screenshots, was one sentence. Honesty always shows up, eventually. No signature. No header. Just the kind of message a ghost would leave if it knew my schedule better than I did. I didn't touch the paper. I turned off the light and left it there, humming with implication like a dare I wasn't ready to accept. Monday blurred into Tuesday, but Tuesday had a new weight. I couldn't tell which parts of my life were mine anymore. I kept my own log like a lifeline. Times, locations, who saw me, what card I used. If someone was rewriting my days, I wanted a counterscript. It wasn't glamorous. It was receipts, parking timestamps, the kind of mundane breadcrumbs people ignore until they need to prove they existed. Work asked me to take a few days. Framed as care, it felt like quarantine. I agreed. Fighting perception with bravado only feeds it. On my way out, my boss lowered his voice. Just be smart, okay? It sounded like advice, and a warning got married. Elevator doors shut on his worried face. That afternoon, I met a counselor. Neutral office, warm lamp, box of tissues no one touched. I told him about the notebook, the printer log, the email rule. He didn't chase the scandal. He asked about sleep. I admitted I hadn't really slept in days. He said, when you deprive the brain, it turns whispers into sirens. He wasn't saying I imagined it. He was saying exhaustion lets doubt narrate. I booked another appointment. Not because I believed I was broken, because I needed someone in the room who hadn't picked a side. On the way home, I called Evan. I need an outside brain, I said. He came over with a laptop like a paramedic with a kit. We sat on the dining table that had turned into my command center. He asked for the printed emails and the screenshots. He looked at the headers, the way the colons lined up, even the tiny spacing before the dash in my signature. People forget forgery is typography, he muttered. Then he showed me something I would have missed. In two different emails, the font and the timestamp shifted by a fraction, same size, slightly different kerning. Invisible unless you care. He circled it. Curated, not captured. We checked my router too, client list, connection times. I'm not paranoid. I'm stubborn. At 2:14 a.m. 3 nights prior, a device labeled guest printer had connected for 11 minutes. We don't have a guest printer. And yet the log said it shook hands with our network, dropped off, returned at 2:27. I stood there in the hallway, suddenly aware of every quiet corner in the house. The office, the laundry room, the closet under the stairs. Homes don't creak the same once you suspect them. That night, I walked the place like a landlord inspecting a stranger's apartment. In the office cabinet, behind a stack of old tax folders, I found a fresh ream of paper still wrapped in plastic. Same brand we always use, but a different finish, smooth white, quick dry. The entries I'd photographed from the black notebook had a slight sheen. Smooth white would do that. Not a revelation. Not yet. But the lie kept showing me its edges. The next morning, a package waited on the porch. Brown paper, no return address, my name in block letters. I opened it with a butter knife like it might bleed. Inside was a single item, a plain USB drive taped to an index card that read, "Backup everything." No sender, no signature. Evan said don't plug it in. I didn't. I put it in a Ziploc like evidence in a movie and drove it to a repair shop that cleans malware and recovers documents. The tech took it with the same blasé nod doctors give when you say you have a cough. "We'll image it offline," he said. 2 days. He handed me a claim slip that suddenly felt heavier than my wallet that I spent the next hours verifying my own reality. I pulled phone location history for the past month. Pins clustered exactly where they should. Office, gym, grocery store. No midnight detours. No hotel dots like accusations. I took screenshots and printed them. I asked for copies of building access logs from work. Security said they'd email what they could. Waiting is its own kind of doubt. You start wondering if evidence can our OT to AT dinner. The silence was surgical. She ate slowly, eyes on her plate, like peace could be portioned if you kept your fork quiet. I said I was taking a short leave to handle personal matters. She nodded and said, "That's probably best." No follow-up. No questions. The absence of curiosity stung. If you love someone, shouldn't you want to know the shape of their storm? After she went to bed, I returned to my spiral and the printer's blue service screen. The job history scrolled like a deadpan diary. Doc_2025_06 18_01 3 pages. Doc_2025_06 22_04 1 page. The timestamps were ugly. 2:11 a.m., 3:02 a.m., 1:58 a.m. The hours rumors are born. I cross-checked them with my phone's sleep tracker. Those nights said restless. Not proof. Another hairline crack that I needed air. I walked the block. Quiet houses breathing behind their blinds. A neighbor's porch light clicked on and off like a blinking eye. My chest finally loosened enough to think past reaction. This wasn't chaos. It was choreography. Whoever built this understood how people metabolize doubt. Give them ordinary details. Season with timestamps. Sprinkle just enough morality that they feel righteous believing it. Back home, I took photos of the office as is, the cords, the printer, the order of items on the desk. If someone liked to move through my life while I slept, I wanted before and after frames. On impulse, I slid a thin strip of tape over the printer's paper tray, tiny and transparent, crease running across the hinge. If it opened, the tear would show. Not a trap. A memo to myself that at 3:06 a.m. I woke without knowing why. The house was quiet, then not. A soft plastic click from the office. I lay there counting my heartbeat until it slowed enough to stand. In the doorway, I saw the tape, split cleanly down the crease. The tray was closed. The page on the output bed said nothing but my name. Just that. Centered. Printed in the same unervingly tidy font. No threats. No accusations. Just a reminder. The script had moved while I slept that I didn't touch the sheet. I didn't wake her. I sat in the hallway with my back to the wall and wrote the time in my spiral. Then, on a new line, I wrote a promise to myself. I will not let a stranger tell me who I am. Morning light felt wrong. The house was too still, the kind of still that sounds staged. I sat at the edge of the bed staring at the folded tape from the printer tray on my desk. It had been torn clean, no jagged edges, like someone had lifted it with precision. My name still sat printed on the page beneath it, centered, perfect, smugged. I didn't throw it away. I placed it in a folder with the other evidence. Every object was starting to feel like a witness. The walls, the cables, the blinking router light. All silent observers to something I couldn't yet explain. While she was in the shower, I checked the USB drive I'd left at the repair shop. The tech said he'd finished imaging it, but wanted me to come in person. There's something weird on it, he said. Not dangerous, just strange. When I got there, he slid a printed report across the counter. The flash drive contained hundreds of text files, all named by date and time. Each file had sentences that began the same way. He said, he looked, he denied, he forgot. It was like reading surveillance notes written by someone narrating my life. A few entries described conversations I clearly remembered having, but they were twisted, condensed, paraphrased to make me sound guilty or unhinged. He looked at me like he wanted to ask questions, but decided not to. You want me to wipe it? He offered. I told him no. I took the drive, thanked him, and left. Outside, I sat in my car and scrolled through a few files. The timestamps matched nights when I'd been awake pacing the kitchen. Whoever wrote these notes knew my schedule down to the minute. That evening, I showed Evan the report. He frowned. These aren't random. Whoever's doing this is documenting your behavior, like they're testing how you'll react. He asked if there were cameras in the house. I told him no, but the certainty in my voice cracked halfway through the word. When he left, I began checking every corner. The office, the vents, the bookshelves. I even lifted picture frames. No cameras, no bugs, at least none that I could find. But I found something else. In the back of my closet, under an old shoebox, was another notebook. Same size, same black cover. Only this one was half empty, and the handwriting wasn't mine at all. The first few pages were copies of entries from the original diary, but then the tone shifted. Notes about timing, handwriting drills, practice sentences. On one page, written faintly in pencil. Pressure on downstrokes still too heavy. Fix before next set. I stared at that line until the letters blurred that I didn't tell her I'd found it. Not yet. I hid it in my car under the spare tire. For the first time, I felt the smallest slice of control. Whoever was behind this wasn't a phantom. They were human, methodical, and careless enough to leave traces. That night at dinner, I studied her across the table. She talked about her day, casual, distant, like nothing was wrong. I waited for her to mention the printer, or the torn tape, or the USB, but she didn't. Her calm was either incredible acting or terrifying confidence. When she went to bed, I checked her laptop. I knew the password. We'd set it together years ago. At first, nothing looked unusual. But in the Downloads folder, there was a text document titled Handwriting Ref 2025. Inside were scanned pages of my old notes, grocery lists, birthday reminders, even post-its I'd written years ago. She had been collecting samples. That realization didn't break me, it froze me. Because the pieces were starting to fit together, but the full picture was still hidden. I didn't understand why. Why build such an elaborate lie? Why me? At 2:45 a.m., the printer clicked again. This time, no paper came out. I went into the office anyway. The monitor light glowed faintly, and there it was, a new file on the desktop, truth.docs. I opened it, and inside was just one line. You're getting closer. No threats, no names. Just that sentence. Like someone watching through the walls, waiting for me to finally see them. I shut off the monitor and stood in the dark, my reflection staring back at me from the glass. The fear had shifted. It wasn't just about being framed anymore. It was about being studied. And whoever was doing it, they were enjoying every second of it. That I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that sentence from the file. You're getting closer. It wasn't just taunting. It was intimate, like whoever wrote it was inside my head, a step ahead of me. By dawn, I'd convinced myself of one thing. This wasn't random anymore. Someone was building a story so carefully that even the smallest details were starting to feel rehearsed. When she woke, I pretended to be half asleep. She kissed my forehead softly and whispered, "You look tired." I didn't answer. My heartbeat was too loud. I wanted to ask where she'd been at 2:45 a.m. when the printer had clicked, but I didn't. Asking questions now would only feed her version of reality, and I wasn't ready to tip my hand. While she showered, I backed up her laptop. Quietly, methodically, I transferred every folder I could, photos, notes, even deleted files from the trash bin. Then I encrypted it and stored it on a separate drive in my office drawer. I didn't know what I was looking for yet, but I could feel it was there. Later that day, I visited the counselor again. He asked how things were progressing. I told him, "Someone's trying to erase me." He didn't flinch. He wrote something in his notebook and asked what evidence I had. I told him about the USB, the logs, the notebook I found hidden in the closet. He said, "If this is targeted, you need to protect your proof." He wasn't dismissive this time. Maybe he'd seen enough to realize I wasn't imagining it. When I left his office, I sat in my car for almost an hour, just breathing. My hands shook, not from fear, but from the realization that I was finally one step away from uncovering who. That evening, I told her I wanted to take her out for dinner. She looked surprised but didn't argue. I booked a restaurant with cameras, subtle, public, neutral ground. We sat near the window, the light catching her face just right. She looked beautiful, calm, and almost proud. Halfway through the meal, I said softly, "You've been through a lot because of all this." "I'm sorry." She reached across the table and touched my hand, the gesture warm but rehearsed. "I just want the truth," she said. Her tone was gentle, but her eyes stayed locked on mine like a detective waiting for a slip. That I smiled and said, "You'll have it." After dinner, we drove home in silence. I noticed her glance at her phone twice, subtly, like waiting for a message. When she went upstairs, I checked her bag. Nothing, except for a small flash drive, silver with a red stripe. My pulse jumped. I placed it back exactly as it was. I didn't need it yet. I needed her to believe I was still in the dark. That night, I reviewed the backup I'd made of her files. Deep in a folder named Receipts, I found something that made my skin crawl, a subfolder labeled Drafts. Inside were half-finished screenshots, text messages written in my tone, but never sent. Practice files. One was even titled, "For Evidence." I stared at the screen, feeling both sick and vindicated. She wasn't just documenting. She was creating. Every proof she had was part of a script she'd been writing piece by piece, probably for months. The diary, the printed pages, the emails, all leading to one outcome: destroy me and make it look like I deserved it. But there was one problem in her plan. She didn't know I had the drafts. The next morning, I printed a few of them and put them in a plain envelope. I didn't confront her, not yet. Instead, I drove to my friend Evan's house and showed him everything. He stared at the pages, speechless at first, then exhaled. "This is deliberate," he said. "She's been engineering this for a while." But why? That was the question I couldn't answer. It wasn't money. We had a joint account. It wasn't revenge. We never fought like that. It was something colder. Something that required patience, planning, and control. That night, when I came home, she smiled like nothing had happened. The perfect wife, the perfect dinner waiting. We talked about ordinary things, the weather, her work, a movie on TV. Everything about the scene looked normal. Except I couldn't stop thinking. The person across from me had written a version of my life where I was the villain, When she went upstairs, I checked the printer again. The tray was still taped, untouched. The air was still. I almost believed it was over, until I saw a new email arrive in my inbox. No sender. No subject. Just one line. Dinner was nice. You're getting better at pretending. My blood ran cold. The trap wasn't just still active, that IT was watching me adapt. Why now? I'd stopped asking why this was happening. I was focused on how to stay one step ahead. Every night felt like a performance. Me pretending to be calm, her pretending not to notice the cracks. The difference was, I didn't know who the audience was anymore. The morning after that anonymous email, I woke up to find my phone buzzing nonstop. Missed calls, messages from friends, from coworkers, even my cousin in another state. Someone had posted screenshots online, private messages that looked like I'd confessed everything. Different names, different women, all written in the same tone as the diary. And worst of all, the timestamps lined up with real events from my calendar. Within hours, my reputation was shredded. People didn't ask if it was true. They asked why I'd done it. The office suspended me, pending investigation. My family stopped calling. Evan was the only one still in touch, and even his voice over the phone sounded strained. "Man, you need to get ahead of this," he said. "Find proof she made it." I already had some. I just didn't know how to use it. Yet, that night, I watched her move around the kitchen. Every gesture calculated, every word measured. She didn't mention the posts, not a single question. That silence told me everything. She wanted me cornered, silent, broken. The perfect ending to her story, but I wasn't giving her that ending. While she slept, I retrieved the second flash drive from her bag. I didn't plug it into my computer. I'd learned that lesson. Instead, I booted up an old laptop, one that hadn't touched our Wi-Fi in years. The drive contained a folder called Notes for Court. Inside were drafts, outlines of what she planned to say, her statements, her proof, even a section labeled Emotional Impact. It read like a screenplay of my downfall. The last paragraph hit hardest. He'll deny it until the end. He'll try to act sane, logical, composed. That's how people like him protect themselves. But when I show the diary and messages, no one will doubt me. People like him. I didn't even know what that meant anymore. A husband? A scapegoat? A character she'd written so well that even I began to question my memory? I printed the entire folder. Then I saved the files to an encrypted cloud drive. Proof, in case she destroyed the originals. By morning, the posts online had been shared hundreds of times. My inbox filled with strangers calling me names I couldn't repeat. I didn't fight back. Not yet. Let her think she'd won. That afternoon, she came into my office holding 2 coffees, smiling softly. "We need to talk," she said. The sweetness in her voice made my skin crawl. She set the cup beside me. "I think it's time to move on from this. We're both hurting. Maybe we should take a break." A break. The word stung more than anger. I asked her, "Did you ever think about what this is doing to me?" She tilted her head. "You did it to yourself." I almost laughed. It was the kind of arrogance only guilt can breed. She believed she had already won, that her story was sealed and mine was over. When she left the room, I slipped one of my small cameras, bought years ago for work, behind a row of books in the office. A motion-triggered recorder. Not illegal, not invasive, just insurance. I set it to back up automatically to the same cloud drive as the files I'd found. Over the next few days, I acted exactly how she expected. Quiet, withdrawn, confused. Meanwhile, the evidence built itself. She started using my computer more often, checking emails, printing things. Every time, I noted the times in my spiral notebook. 3 nights later, I caught her on the camera. She thought I was asleep. She sat at my desk, typing fast, opening folders, inserting the flash drive I'd already copied. Her reflection in the dark screen looked almost serene, like she was crafting art, not destruction. The next morning, I didn't confront her. I just said, "I'll be working from the library today." She nodded, unconcerned. Perfect.at the library. I downloaded the latest footage. The recording was clear. Her face, her hands, her movements, all caught in soft, irrefutable light. The timestamps matched the exact moments my confessions had been posted. I remember sitting there in that quiet public space, surrounded by people reading newspapers and students tapping keyboards, realizing that I finally had the missing piece. She wasn't just building a lie. She was rehearsing it, and soon, she'd perform it, before a judge, before our friends. before anyone who'd ever trusted me. But this time, I'd be the one holding the script that I spent the next week pretending my life hadn't already been burned down. On the outside, I played the defeated husband, quiet, resigned, avoiding eye contact. On the inside, I was cataloging every move, every click, every smirk she thought I didn't notice. The video footage from the office was my anchor. I watched it again and again, her body language calm, deliberate, precise. She didn't rush. She typed like someone writing a script she already knew by heart. She wasn't improvising. She was executing. I backed up the footage 3 different ways: offline drive, encrypted cloud, and one copy hidden on a USB tape beneath the bottom drawer of my desk. I didn't trust anyone, not even Evan. The fewer people who knew, the better. The next morning, she handed me an envelope. Her voice was soft, almost kind. "It's from my lawyer," she said. Inside was a draft of divorce papers. Neat, unemotional, efficient. No mention of love, just property and signatures. She'd already filled in half the details for me, including a line about evidence of infidelity. My stomach turned. She wasn't waiting for the truth. She was finalizing the ending I didn't sign. I told her I needed time. She smiled faintly, like she'd expected that, and said, "Take all the time you need. The truth doesn't change." That night, Evan came over. He'd seen the viral posts spreading again, new messages from me, even more detailed. "She's going public," he said. "You need to fight back before it sticks permanently." I nodded, but my plan was already forming. Fighting back too early would make me look desperate. What I needed was timing, to expose her in her own rhythm. Over the next few days, I began setting a counter trap. I restored an old family laptop, one we hadn't used in years. Then I created a fake folder labeled apology letters and filled it with harmless drafts, confessions that sounded real but didn't incriminate me. I even copied her writing style, short, precise, emotionally charged. I left the laptop open on my desk. The bait. That night, around 2 a.m., I heard the faint click of the office door. My heart pounded. I waited, counting her footsteps. 5 minutes. 10. Then silence. The next morning, the fake folder was empty. She'd copied it, just like I'd hoped. At by noon, a new post appeared online. It quoted one of the fake letters, word for word. "I can't stop," it said. "I don't deserve her forgiveness." The handwriting matched mine perfectly because she'd made it that way. She didn't realize. She'd just handed me proof of her manipulation. Evan came over that evening, and I showed him the trap. He stared at me, equal parts impressed and horrified. "You're turning into her," he said quietly. "Maybe," I replied, "but she started this show. I'm just taking the stage back." For the next few days, I gathered everything: the diary, the forged letters, the copied USB drives, the screen recordings of her posts, and the footage of her using my computer. Piece by piece, the puzzle became undeniable. She hadn't just faked evidence. She'd orchestrated a psychological performance meant to destroy me publicly, emotionally, and legally. But the brilliance of her plan was also its weakness. She wanted recognition. She wanted people to see her uncovering the lie. That ego would be her downfall. I waited until Friday. She left early that morning, saying she had a meeting with her lawyer. I followed her, discreetly, keeping 2 cars behind. She didn't go to any law office. She stopped at a cafe downtown and met with a woman I didn't recognize. I parked across the street and watched through the glass. She slid a folder across the table, smiling like someone sealing a deal. The woman nodded and took notes. A reporter. I knew that look. I didn't storm in. I let her finish. Let her think she'd just sold the final chapter of her story. When she got home that evening, I was waiting in the kitchen, calm, focused. The folder with my evidence sat on the counter, a neat, quiet monument of everything she'd done. She looked at it, then at me, and froze. "What's that?" she asked, her voice small. "Your real confession," I said. She didn't respond, just blinked once. Calculating. For the first time, she looked afraid, and that's when I knew the performance was finally shifting. Next time, she wouldn't be directing the scene. I would. She stood there, eyes darting between me and the folder. Her usual calm cracked. Not a lot, just a tremor in the corners of her mouth. For months, she'd been the one in control, the director of every scene, the one who could twist reality until I doubted my own pulse. But now, she saw something in my eyes she hadn't seen before, certainty that I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. You've been building this for a long time, I said quietly. Every word, every fake message, every mistake I never made. Her jaw tightened. You're paranoid, she replied, forcing a laugh that didn't sound like her. You're making things up again. That's what you do, right? Twist everything until you're the victim. I slid one of the printed pages toward her, a still image from the footage. Her face, caught in the blue glow of my computer screen, hand poised over the keyboard. The timestamp glared from the corner, the same moment one of my confessions went live online. She stared at it for a second too long before speaking. You set me up. No, I said. You did. She turned away, pacing slowly, her breath shallow. I could see her mind racing, searching for an angle, a way to rewrite this scene too. You think anyone will believe that? You think they'll trust your version after what's out there? I stepped closer. They don't have to believe me. They'll believe you. Because it's your handwriting, your devices, your voice on those recordings. For the first time, she looked small, not broken, just suddenly aware that she wasn't the author anymore, that I didn't push her further. Instead, I said, you wanted the truth? You'll get it. Every line of it. That night, I went to Evan's house. We reviewed everything. The footage, the forged emails, the drafts she'd left behind, the posts, the timestamps. It wasn't just enough to prove my innocence. It was enough to expose her entire operation. Evan leaned back, whistling softly. You realize, he said, this is more than revenge. This is survival. I nodded. Exactly. We spent hours organizing the files, labeling each folder, cross-checking every date. By midnight, I had everything packed into a hard drive. Neat, verified, impossible to dispute. My plan was simple. Bring it to a lawyer first thing in the morning, file a report, and let the truth dismantle her story piece by piece. But life never gives you clean endings. When I came home, the house was quiet, too quiet. The folder I'd left on the counter was gone. My computer was on, the chair slightly turned, the smell of her perfume faint in the air. My chest tightened. Then I saw it, an envelope on my desk, my name written in her handwriting. Inside was a short note. You shouldn't have filmed me. You'll regret this. And beneath it, a single USB drive. Not one of mine. A new one that I didn't plug it in. Not yet. Instead, I called Evan. She knows, I said. She took the folder. He swore under his breath. Don't panic. You've still got the backups. I did. But her message wasn't about the evidence. It was a warning. She wanted me afraid, reactive, back on the defensive. I sat in the dark, the USB still in my hand. She wanted me to open it. She wanted me to see whatever she'd left there. Maybe a final manipulation, maybe a threat. So I did what she wouldn't expect. I didn't open it. I sealed it in a bag, labeled it with the date and time, and stored it with the rest of the evidence. Then I checked my cloud backup one last time. Every file was still there, except one. The folder named truth.docs was gone. My blood ran cold. That file wasn't hers. It was mine. My document. The one where I'd written every detail, every discovery. Deleted, remotely. And that meant only one thing. She wasn't finished. The next morning, I woke to a text message from an unknown number. Meet me before you do something stupid. I want to explain everything. The address was familiar. Our old cabin, 2 hours outside the city. The place where we'd spent our honeymoon. I stared at the message for a long time, feeling the world tilt. It was either a confession or a trap. Either way, I was going. Because after everything she'd done, I needed to look her in the eyes, one last time, and end this story myself. The drive to the cabin felt endless. The highway blurred under the early fog, trees closing in like spectators. My hands clenched the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. I didn't tell Evan I was going. I didn't tell anyone. This was between her and me, the writer and the rewritten. When I reached the cabin, it looked exactly as we'd left it years ago. Same chipped paint, same porch swing swaying slightly in the wind. Her car was parked out front. The engine was still warm. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of cedar and dust. The curtains were half drawn, and the only light came from a small desk lamp near the window. She was sitting there, calm, composed, a mug of coffee in her hands, like we were about to have a casual talk instead of a reckoning. You came, she said. Her voice smooth, almost relieved. I almost didn't, I answered. But I need to understand. What? She looked at me for a long time before setting the mug down. Because you were going to leave me, she said simply. I knew it. You'd stopped seeing me, stopped talking. I was disappearing in my own house. That's not true, I said, my voice shaking. You built a whole lie around that idea. You destroyed everything. She tilted her head slightly. No, I rebuilt it. I just made the version that fit. That line hit me harder than anything she'd done. I made the version that fit. She truly believed this was art, that rewriting my life was some twisted way to prove her importance in it. I placed a small recorder on the table between us. You should know I'm recording this, I said. She smiled faintly. Of course you are. You've become predictable. I ignored the jab. You forged documents, fabricated messages, created false evidence. Why go this far? Because truth is boring, she said softly. People don't care about real stories. They care about pain, betrayal, drama. You gave me nothing real anymore, so I had to make something worth watching. It wasn't anger I felt then. It was something colder, the realization that she no longer lived in the same version of reality. She'd turned our marriage into theater, our life into a performance. She leaned forward slightly, eyes glinting. And you played your part perfectly. Everyone believed it. Even you started to. I didn't move. I just said, it's over. Her smile faded. No, it's not. You think you can fix this with your recordings and screenshots? I still have the audience. They believe me. I opened my bag, pulling out the folder, the one I'd kept hidden from her. Inside was the footage, the backups, the timestamped files, the motion-triggered recordings. I slid it across the table. Not anymore. For the first time, she looked rattled. Her eyes flickered as she opened the folder, scanning the pages. Her fingers trembled slightly. You shouldn't have done this, she whispered. You shouldn't have done any of it, I replied. There was silence. The kind that fills the room when a lie finally runs out of breath. Then she exhaled slowly, the fight draining from her shoulders. You know, she said quietly. For a moment, I thought you'd never figure it out. You were always so trusting. That's why it worked. I trusted you, I said. That was my mistake. But you taught me something. Truth doesn't defend itself. You have to build it like armor. Her gaze softened, and for just a second, I saw the woman I'd fallen in love with. Not the manipulator, not the architect of chaos. Just the person she used to be before obsession hollowed her out. What are you going to do? She asked finally. I'm giving this to my lawyer, I said. Everything. The court will see what you did. Every forgery, every post, every lie. She nodded slowly, almost in acceptance. Then I guess the story's over. No, I said, standing. It's just not yours anymore. I walked toward the door. Behind me, I heard her whisper something, barely audible. You'll miss the attention. I paused, but didn't turn around. No, I said. I'll enjoy the silence. Outside, the air felt lighter. The fog had lifted, revealing the forest bathed in gold light. I stood by my car, the folder clutched in my hand, and felt something I hadn't in months. Peaced as I drove away, my phone buzzed, a message from Evan. The lawyer's ready. Bring everything. I looked back once, just long enough to see the cabin disappearing behind the trees. It wasn't triumph I felt. It wasn't revenge. It was freedom. The kind that only comes after someone tries to rewrite your story and you finally take the pen back. 2 days after the cabin. I walked into my lawyer's office with the folder pressed to my chest like a shield. He'd already heard the rumors. Everyone had. But when he saw the evidence, the careful timeline, the recordings, and the clear footage of her typing my confessions, his expression changed from skepticism to focus. This isn't just defamation, he said. This is systematic manipulation. Digital forgery, identity fabrication. We can prove intent. It took weeks. Statements, hearings, expert reviews. Each time she tried to twist the story again, the evidence pulled tighter around her. Her own files, her fingerprints, her login timestamps. Her silence in the courtroom said more than her words ever could. The moment the judge called it deliberate and malicious falsification, I didn't feel victory. I felt empty, like someone had turned down the volume on my life. She was ordered to issue a public retraction and face charges for evidence tampering. Her reputation fell apart as quickly as she'd built mine to collapse. Reporters tried to contact me. I didn't answer. I'd had enough of headlines and stories. I just wanted quiet. Evan was waiting outside the courthouse. He handed me a coffee and grinned. Guess you finally rewrote her ending. He said that. I shook my head. No, I just stopped being her character. That night, I went home alone to a different apartment, smaller, quieter. I unpacked one box at a time. No black notebooks, no printers humming at 3 a.m., no emails from nowhere. Just space. That I opened my new laptop and started typing. Not a defense, not an accusation, just truth. About what happens when someone takes your story and weaponizes it. About how easy it is to lose your identity in the noise, and how good it feels to get it back. Months passed. The internet moved on to its next scandal. People who had once believed the lies stopped messaging. A few reached out with apologies. Most didn't. I didn't blame them. Everyone wants a villain. They just rarely stop to check if they've got the right one. My life didn't snap back to normal overnight. I rebuilt it piece by piece. A new job, new friends, therapy, because even when the lies are gone, the echoes stay. One evening, I found myself holding that old spiral notebook again, the one where I tracked every time, every movement, every note. I flipped to the first page and read the line I'd written months ago. I will not let a stranger tell me who I am. That stranger had been her, but it had also been the world. The rumor, the fear. Now, finally, that sentence felt true. I closed the notebook, placed it in a drawer, and turned off the light. For the first time in a long time, I slept through the night. In the morning, sunlight spilled through the window. My phone buzzed, a message from Evan. You ever think about writing it all down? The whole thing? I smiled. Maybe I just had to. So now I'll ask you, did I do the right thing? Would you have gone to the cabin? Would you have fought back or just walked away? Tell me in the comments. What would you have done in my place? And if you don't want to miss more true stories like this one, make sure to subscribe, hit the like button, and leave your thoughts below. Your story might just be the next one we tell.